The helm seal engages with a sound like bone breaking cleanly, and the taste of machine sanitizer floods the back of my throat, sharp, chemical, final. My vision contracts to the narrow aperture of the visor slit, and the world becomes information. Threat vectors, atmospheric composition, squad telemetry scrolling in amber script along the peripheral feed. I am Brother Castian, reclusium penitent of the Crimson Castellans, and this is the beginning of my sanctioned duty window, one drop cycle, measured from first bell to extraction, a span of time in which there is no deviation, no reprieve, only the execution of what has already been decided. The reliquary rod is placed into my gauntlets by a chapter serf whose face I cannot see and whose name I will not remember. It is bone white, carved from something ancient, capped with a cracked aquila whose wings have been fused back together with bronze wire. Inside the hollow core, suspended in yellowed resin, is a sliver of rib, a fragment of Saint Calamir the Unyielding, who died standing upright with 17 wounds and whose last breath was a prayer of compliance. The rod is heavier than it should be, heavier than the materials account for, as though the weight of witnessing has accumulated in the marrow. My task is simple: carry it where the chaplain commands, stand where it can be seen, let its presence harden the living and shame the hesitant. The Catechism says the relic does not protect, it judges. Around me, the hangar deck is a controlled storm of preparation. Tactical dreadnought armor locks into drop harnesses with percussive finality. Bolters are blessed with oils that smell like burnt sugar and iron. The tech marines chant in binaric cant, their voices layered into harmonics that bypass comprehension and strike directly at the nerves. I hear the chaplain's voice rising above it all, Chaplain Voss, whose Crozius has killed more brothers than heretics, whose role is not inspiration but correction. He is calling out sins before they occur, assigning them to squads like rations. Pride to the assault veterans who check their jump pack seals too many times. Fear to the devastators who recalibrate targeting solutions beyond necessity. Doubt to anyone whose gaze lingers on the chronometer. I feel nothing but relief. Doctrine removes the burden of interpretation. I know my place, my function, my value. I am the bearer of judgment, not its arbiter. The Thunderhawk's assault ramp begins to rise, sealing us inside the belly of the machine. The interior lighting shifts from white to red, and my suit's environmental systems adjust, compensating for the change in pressure, the increase in heat, the thickening air. My secondary heart engages, a steady counterpoint to the first, doubling my endurance, synchronizing my blood chemistry with the demands that are coming. I taste copper at the back of my throat, a reminder that my body is not entirely my own. It is Legion property, gene-wrought and maintained, a tool kept in optimal condition for the Emperor's work. The reliquary rod pulses once against my palm, a vibration so faint it might be imagination, except the machine spirit of my armor records it as a temperature fluctuation 0.3 degrees, localized, unexplained. I dismiss the reading. Relics are permitted their mysteries. Faith does not require measurement. Chaplain Voss moves through the rows of warriors, his skull-faced helm tilted slightly as though listening to confessions we have not spoken aloud. His voice, when it emerges through the vox, is not loud, but it fills every frequency, inescapable. We descend upon a world that has forgotten the shape of loyalty. Compliance was declared 16 hours ago by the planetary governor. The administratum confirms tithe completion. Yet the vox channels carry prayer in our own litanies, spoken by mouths that should not know them. This is the enemy's newest heresy, not corruption of flesh, but corruption of correct words. We will purge not because they have fallen, but because they have learned to mimic standing upright. There is no response required. We are instruments. Instruments do not question the hand that wields them. The Thunderhawk shudders as it disengages from the strike cruiser's docking clamps, and I feel the shift in gravity, the sickening lurch as we transition from ship time to descent time. The engines scream, a sound that penetrates even the armor's noise baffling, and I understand that we are committed now. The drop cycle timer activates in the corner of my visor. 8 hours, 12 minutes. counting down in relentless amber numerals. Enough time to cleanse a hive sector. Enough time to erase a population. Not enough time to understand what we are erasing. I was chosen for this role 3 months ago, after I survived a boarding action in which my squad was reduced to ash and I alone remained functional. The chaplain asked me one question: did I hesitate before sealing the bulkhead that trapped my brothers with the enemy? I answered truthfully, no. He told me that such clarity was rare and dangerous, that it made me useful but also vulnerable, that I would serve the reclusium as a witness and a warning. I did not understand then. I understand now that a penitent is not being punished for sin but prepared for a kind of sin that has not yet been committed. The descent takes 14 minutes. Flak impacts rattle against the hull like hail, and the Thunderhawk's machine spirit compensates with aggressive course corrections that press me against my restraints. My armor's gyros whine as they stabilize my torso, preventing my spine from compressing under the G-forces. Around me, my brothers recite the litany of descent, their voices overlapping into a wall of sound that drowns out thought. I do not join them. My role is silence. The relic must be carried without distraction, without commentary, without the contamination of personal devotion. I am the frame, not the portrait. The Vox crackles with command traffic, squad designations, breach points, kill zones. The tactical overview unfolds in my visor, a manufactorum crypt complex, half buried, 7 levels descending into bedrock. The upper levels are designated green for compliant civilian presence. The lower levels are black for unknown activity, assume hostile. Our insertion point is level 3, a transit junction where the laborers gathered for daily prayer before the silence began. Intelligence reports suggest the enemy is using the prayer schedule as an operational framework, turning devotion into a weapon of coordination. I do not understand how prayer can be a weapon, but I do not need to. That is the chaplain's concern. The Thunderhawk's engines reverse thrust, and my stomach compresses as we decelerate violently. The assault ramp drops before we touch down, and superheated air floods the compartment, air that tastes like burned plastic and spoiled meat, air that carries a chemical sweetness. My visor's olfactory analysis identifies as atmospheric non-compliance. Investigate further. The warning icon blinks once, then clears. The machine spirit decides the deviation is within acceptable parameters. I step off the ramp into a world that feels wrong in ways the sensors cannot articulate. The ground is ferrocrete, standard imperial construction, but it gives slightly under my boots as though the substrate has softened. The sky overhead is a uniform gray, not clouds but a haze that seems to press downward, refusing to dissipate. The Manufactorum crypt rises before us, a brutalist structure of reinforced rockcrete and corroded steel, its exterior covered in devotional script that has been carved so deeply the letters have created channels where rainwater pools and rust blooms. The chaplain raises his crozius, and the activation stud sends a pulse of electric blue light down the haft. Advance. Preserve the gene seed. Trust only the words you were taught in the reclusium. All other speech is enemy action. We move in formation, a phalanx of ceramite and faith, our boots striking the ground in perfect synchronization. The reliquary rod is held high in my left hand, my bolt pistol in my right, both arms locked at the prescribed angles. I am 5 paces behind the chaplain, exactly where doctrine demands. I do not look at my brothers' faces because their helms are sealed and their faces are irrelevant. We are a single weapon with many limbs. The first bodies appear at the threshold of the Manufactorum entrance. They are arranged in prayer postures, kneeling, hands clasped, heads bowed, but their hands are fused to their faces, flesh melted into flesh, as though they attempted to press their mouths shut and the heat of their devotion completed the task. Their clothing is intact. There are no signs of violence, no lace burns, no bullet wounds, only the merger of hand and face, a union that looks almost deliberate. Brother Sergeant Macris, a veteran of the Fourth Crusade, approaches the nearest body and scans it with his auspex. The device emits a soft chime, confirming biological death without anomaly. He mutters something into the squad channel, and I catch only fragments, consistent with voluntary action, no coercion markers. Prayer compliance index exceeded safe thresholds. The chaplain does not break stride. They chose obedience over breath. The Imperium honors their devotion. We proceed. We enter the manufactorum. The interior is cavernous, a space designed to house assembly lines and heavy machinery, now emptied of function. The machinery remains great rusted arms hanging from the ceiling like the limbs of a mechanical corpse, conveyor belts frozen mid-motion, their surfaces covered in dust that has not been disturbed in weeks. The lighting is dim, provided by chemlooms that flicker irregularly, casting shadows that seem to move independently of their sources. The Auspex pings. Contact, bearing 270, range 18 meters, designation unknown. We pivot in unison, bolters raised, targeting arrays locking onto the source. It is a wall, just a wall. Ferrocrete, 3 meters thick, no apertures. The Auspex insists the contact is real, insists the thermal signature is consistent with human presence, but there is nothing visible, nothing targetable. Brother Sergeant Macris stares at the wall for 3 seconds. Then he fires. The bolt rounds detonate on impact, peeling away the outer layer of rockcrete in fist-sized chunks, and behind the facade is a cavity, an artificial void filled with devotional plaques. Hundreds of them, stacked like bricks, each one scraped clean of names and dates, leaving only the shape of text without content. They are Imperial plaques, standard issue remembrance markers, but they have been erased so thoroughly that even the indentations of the engraving tools are gone. Macris does not explain his decision. He simply says, "Into the Vox, correct," and continues advancing. I do not ask what was correct. The reliquary rod grows warmer in my grasp. We descend into level 4. The transit shafts are operational, their gravitic lifts humming with power. But we take the maintenance stairs because doctrine forbids reliance on potentially compromised systems. The stairs are narrow, forcing us into single file, and the sound of our passage echoes upward and downward simultaneously, creating the auditory illusion that we are being followed by another squad moving in reverse. The temperature increases with each level. My armor compensates, but I feel it anyway, a dry heat that tightens the skin, that makes the air inside my helm taste like ash. The reliquary rod is no longer merely warm. It is hot, hot enough that my gauntlet's internal sensors flag it as a burn risk, but I do not release it. That would be failure, the rod judges. If it burns me, I am found wanting. Level 4 is a habitation zone, designed to house the manufactorum's labor serfs. The hab units are small, each one identical to the next, arranged in rows that extend beyond the range of our loom beams. The doors are open, all of them. Every single door stands ajar, revealing interiors that are spotlessly clean, beds made with military precision, ration packs stacked in perfect columns, prayer scrolls pinned to walls at exact intervals. There are people inside, civilians. They stand in the center of their hab units, faces lifted toward the ceiling, mouths moving in synchronized rhythm. No sound emerges, but the movement of their lips is unmistakable. They are speaking, reciting something, their jaws working through syllables with the mechanical consistency of servitors executing subroutines. The chaplain signals for halt. We form a perimeter, bolters trained on the silent prayers. My targeting reticle drifts across faces, men, women, adolescents, even children, all ages. All compliant, all wrong. Chaplain Voss steps forward, Crozius held low, and when he speaks, his voice is amplified through external voxcasters, filling the hab level with the weight of authority. In the name of the Emperor, and by the sanction of the Adeptus Astartes, identify yourselves and state your compliance. The civilians stop moving their lips. As one. Instantly. Then, in perfect unison, they speak. We are the compliant. We have received the word. We repeat the word. We are the word made audible. Praise the Emperor, who gave us the structure of prayer. Praise the crimson castellans, whose litanies are our salvation. Blessed is the bolter, for it speaks truth. Blessed is the chaplain, for he corrects the wayward. We are corrected. We are complete. The words are ours. Every phrase is pulled from our chapter's catechism, specific phrases taught only in the reclusium, phrases that should not exist outside our fortress monastery. The pronunciation is flawless. The cadence is exact. My armor's vox analysis subroutine confirms. Linguistic match. Zero deviation. Brother Sergeant Macris lowers his bolter slightly. They speak compliance. They honor the chapter. Why do we hesitate? The chaplain's helm turns toward him, and even through the skull-faced ceramite, the weight of disapproval is tangible. Because the enemy is not always outside the skin, Brother Sergeant. Because corruption does not always announce itself with claws and teeth. Because the most dangerous heresy is the one that wears the Emperor's face. He raises his croziers, and the civilians flinch not in fear, but in anticipation, as though they have been waiting for the blow. Repeat after me. The chaplain commands. The Emperor protects. The civilians respond immediately. The Emperor protects. Only the faithful shall be saved. Only the faithful shall be saved. In the darkness, we are the light. In the darkness, we are the light. The chaplain pauses. Then he speaks a phrase I have never heard before, a sentence that is not in any liturgy I know, a string of Gothic that feels grammatically wrong, syntactically backwards. The light consumes the lamp that holds it. The civilians do not hesitate. They repeat it perfectly, with the same inflection, the same rhythm. The light consumes the lamp that holds it. The chaplain lowers his crozius. Purge them, all of them. They are beyond recovery. There is no debate. The order is absolute. My brothers open fire, and the Hab units erupt into fountains of blood and ceramite dust. The civilians do not run. They do not scream. They continue reciting phrases, our phrases, correct phrases, even as their bodies are torn apart by mass reactive rounds. A child, perhaps 8 years old, loses her left arm and continues speaking, her voice clear and calm. Blessed is the gene seed, for it is the Emperor's currency. She collapses only when her skull is removed. I do not fire. My role is the reliquary. I hold it high, as prescribed, and I watch the purge unfold with the detachment that doctrine demands. My heart rate does not increase. My breathing remains controlled. But the rod in my hands burns hotter, hot enough now that I smell the synthetic fibers of my undersuit beginning to singe. The pain is irrelevant. The judgment is clear. The killing takes 4 minutes. When it is complete, the Hab units are charnel houses, walls painted red, floors slick with fluids. My armor identifies as biological compliance indicators. Non-hostile composition. The civilians' bodies leak blood that is chemically pure, uncorrupted, exactly as Imperial biology should be. The chaplain kneels beside one of the corpses, a woman, middle-aged, her face frozen in an expression of serene satisfaction. He removes a small vial from his armor's utility belt and collects a sample of her blood. The vial seals with a click, and he attaches it to his crozius like a trophy. Evidence of method, he says, as though speaking to himself. The Ordo Hereticus will want confirmation. We continue descending. Level 5 is industrial infrastructure, vast chambers filled with pipes and conduits, the circulatory system of the Manufactorum crypt. The air here is thick with moisture, condensation dripping from every surface, creating a constant patter that sounds like whispered conversation. My suit's audio filters attempt to isolate meaningful sounds, but the dripping is too pervasive, too rhythmic, and the filters begin marking it as potential vox traffic. Decode in progress. The decode never completes. The dripping is just water. But it sounds like words. We encounter the first true resistance in a junction chamber where 6 transit tubes converge. The enemy has fortified the position with improvised barricades, stacks of ration crates, welded pipe sections, furniture torn from Hab units. Behind the barricades, I see movement. Armed figures, civilians with lasguns and stub guns, their clothing marked with Imperial insignia, their faces hidden behind rebreather masks. They open fire without warning. Las bolts scorch across my armor's breastplate, and I feel the heat bloom even through the ceramite, a sharp sting that my nervous system interprets as acceptable damage. No action required. My brothers return fire with overwhelming precision. The barricades disintegrate under sustained bolter volleys, and the defenders are annihilated in seconds. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They simply die, their bodies falling into neat rows as though organized by an unseen hand. We advance through the wreckage, and I step over a corpse that is still clutching a data slate. The screen is active, displaying a prayer schedule hourly devotions, each one linked to a specific Imperial saint, each one annotated with our chapter's commentary. The annotations are perfect. They match our internal doctrinal texts word for word, including marginalia that should only exist in the Reclusium's archives. Brother Tekmarine Vorel retrieves the slate and scans it with a Mechanicus-blessed auger. His voice crackles over the vox, tight with something that might be confusion or might be suppressed rage. The data is authenticated, Imperial encryption, source stamped with our own Fortress Monastery's signifier. This is our data, brothers. Ours. Transmitted from inside our own walls. The chaplain does not turn to look at him. Then we have been infiltrated, and this world is the evidence of our failure. Another reason to ensure nothing survives that might testify to it. We reach level 6. The chron plate in my visor indicates 4 hours and 17 minutes have elapsed. The halfway mark has passed. Time is accelerating, compressing, each minute feeling shorter than the last as the extraction window narrows. I am aware of the timer now in a way I was not before, aware that every action must be calculated against the dwindling span, that efficiency is no longer optional but mandatory. Level 6 is the prayer hall, a vast circular chamber designed to hold the entire workforce for synchronized devotional exercises. The ceiling is a dome, inscribed with Imperial scripture, the words carved so deeply they create acoustic channels that amplify sound into layered echoes. At the center of the chamber is a shrine, and at the center of the shrine is a construct that stops us cold. It is a tower of vox speakers, stacked 20 meters high, each one oriented in a different direction, each one connected to a central broadcast node that pulses with corrupt light. The speakers are not Imperial manufacture. They are biological grown, not built, their housings made from something that resembles bone, their diaphragms made from something that resembles stretched skin. Around the base of the tower, arranged in concentric circles, are teeth. Thousands of teeth. Human teeth, pulled and arranged with geometric precision, forming patterns that my visor's analytical subroutines cannot pass because they do not correspond to any known language or symbolic system. The vox speakers are broadcasting. Not sound, my armor's audio filters report silence, but something else. Something my suit's machine spirit identifies as non-standard frequency. Prayer wave detected. The broadcast is a prayer, looped endlessly, spoken in our litanies, but the structure has been altered. The syntax rearranged so that the meaning inverts while the words remain correct. The Emperor abandons those who abandon doubt. Faith is the enemy of the faithful. In obedience, we are unmade. Brother Sergeant Macris steps toward the tower, his bolter raised, and then he stops. His hand trembles. He lowers the weapon slowly, as though the weight has become unbearable, and when he speaks, his voice is wrong, too soft, too uncertain. I do not remember why we are here. I remember the orders. I remember the words, but I do not remember the reason beneath the words. The chaplain moves to him instantly, Crozius raised, and strikes him across the helm, not a killing blow, but a correction, a sharp crack that sends Macris stumbling backward. The reason is obedience. The reason is duty. You are remembering too much, brother. Empty your mind and advance. Macris straightens. His voice, when he speaks again, is steady. Compliance confirmed. Advancing. He turns toward the tower and opens fire. The Vox speakers explode in sequence, each detonation releasing a spray of fluid that is not oil and not blood, but something in between, something that smells like overheated circuits and rotten faith. The tower collapses inward, folding into itself, and the prayer wave cuts off mid-syllable. The silence that follows is worse than the broadcast. It is a silence that feels occupied, as though something was listening through the prayers and is now listening through the absence of them. The chaplain orders the teeth gathered and incinerated. My brothers comply, scooping handfuls of molars and incisors into sanctified braziers that burn with chemical heat. The teeth do not crack or blacken, they simply vanish, consumed so completely there is not even ash. I hold the reliquary rod throughout the cleansing, and I notice, for the first time, that the aquila at its peak has changed. The crack that ran through the bird's chest has widened slightly, creating a gap that was not there before. I did not drop the rod, I did not strike it against anything, yet it has fractured further, as though the weight of witnessing has exceeded the bronze wire's capacity to hold. We descend to level 7, the final level, the black level. The chron plate shows 2 hours and 43 minutes remaining. The descent shaft ends in a sealed bulkhead marked with warning glyphs in Low Gothic and Mechanicus Cant, restricted. Authorized personnel only, penalty for violation, summary execution. The bulkhead is imperial, standard naval pattern, but it has been reinforced with additional plating welded haphazardly across its surface, as though someone attempted to seal it from the outside and ran out of time. Brother Tekmarine Voral approaches with a breaching charge, but before he can plant it, the bulkhead unseals itself. The locks disengage with a hiss of escaping pressure, and the door swings inward, revealing a corridor that extends into darkness so complete my visor's low-light amplification struggles to penetrate it. The chaplain raises his Crozius, and the electric blue light pushes back the shadows by a few meters. This is invitation. The enemy wants us inside. We will oblige them, because obedience to our mission supersedes caution. But know this, brothers, beyond this threshold, language itself is compromised. Trust only silence. Speak only when I command it. We enter. The corridor is narrow, forcing us into a single-file column. The walls are smooth, featureless, without the usual conduits and maintenance panels. The floor is soft, almost spongy, and each step produces a faint squelch that my audio filters flag as biological. Investigate moisture composition. I do not investigate. I do not have the tools, and I do not want the answer. The corridor opens into a chamber that should not exist. It is too large. My armor's spatial mapping subroutines report dimensions that exceed the Manufactorum crypt's structural capacity. The chamber extends 300 meters in diameter, but the exterior scans placed level 7 at only 70 meters across. The discrepancy is flagged as a calculation error, then ignored. The chamber is a library. Shelves line the walls, rising to a ceiling obscured by shadows, each shelf filled with books bound in black leather, their spines unmarked. At the center of the chamber is a table, and at the table sits a man. He is elderly, perhaps 70 or 80 years old, dressed in simple robes that bear no insignia, no rank markers, no identification. His hands are folded on the table's surface, and his eyes, pale blue, unclouded, fix on us without fear or surprise. He looks at us the way one might look at expected guests who have arrived precisely on schedule. The chaplain approaches, Crozius held ready. Identify yourself. The man smiles. It is a small smile, polite, almost apologetic. I am Canon Prefect Solus, formerly of the Ecclesiarchy's third didactic mission, currently assigned to what you might call a corrective study. I have been waiting for you. The Crimson Castellans always arrive on time. You speak our chapter's name. How? Because you taught me, Chaplain Voss. Not you personally, of course, but your words, your litanies, your catechisms. You broadcast them across every world you conquer. You embed them in every compliance document. You carve them into every monument you build. You expect the Imperium to remember them, to repeat them, to live by them. And we do. We have. But in studying your words, we discovered something you perhaps did not intend. We discovered that your prayers are not designed to save. They are designed to sustain a very specific kind of suffering. The chaplain's grip on his Crozius tightens. You misinterpret. You corrupt through ignorance. Do I? Solus gestures toward the shelves. Every book in this chamber is an imperial devotional text. Every prayer, every litany, every oath. I have spent 40 years reading them, cross-referencing them, mapping their linguistic structures, and I have found the pattern. Your faith does not uplift, it burdens. Your obedience does not free, it chains. Your emperor does not love, he demands. And the most brilliant cruelty of it all is that you are trained to call this suffering righteousness. Brother Sergeant Macris steps forward, bolter raised. Heresy. Clear heresy. Permission to execute? The chaplain does not grant permission. He is staring at Solus with an intensity that feels almost curious. If you believe our faith to be a trap, why do you speak it so fluently? Why do your people recite our words with such precision? Solus's smile widens. Because I am teaching you a lesson, chaplain. I am showing you what happens when your own doctrines are used against you. The civilians you killed were not corrupted. They were perfected. They had memorized every word, followed every instruction, believed every promise. They were the most loyal servants the Imperium could ask for. And you butchered them because their loyalty was indistinguishable from the enemy's mockery. That is the trap. That is the heresy. Not mine. Yours. The chaplain raises his Crozius. The activation stud flares, bathing the chamber in cold blue light. Your words are weapons. Your lesson is unnecessary. We already know faith can be turned into a blade. That is why we are the blade's keepers. You will burn, Canon Prefect, and your library will burn, and when the ashes settle, the Imperium will continue exactly as it has, because the Imperium does not learn, it endures. He brings the Crozius down, and Solus does not move, does not flinch, does not even close his eyes. The weapon strikes his skull with a wet crack, and the Canon Prefect collapses across the table, his blood pooling around the folded hands that never unclasped. The chaplain turns to us. Burn it, all of it. We leave nothing that can be studied, nothing that can be quoted, nothing that can testify. We comply. Flamers are brought forward, and the shelves ignite in waves of promethium fire. The books burn with unusual intensity, as though the words themselves are fuel, as though doctrine has become flammable. The heat is immense, and my armor's cooling systems strain to compensate, venting excess thermal load through exhaust ports that glow cherry red. I stand in the center of the burning library, holding the reliquary rod. And I watch the flames consume 40 years of study, 40 years of devotion, 40 years of a man attempting to understand the very thing that was supposed to save him. The rod in my hands is now scorching, the heat exceeding my gloves' tolerance, and I feel the synthetic fibers of my inner suit beginning to fuse to my skin. The pain is sharp, insistent, undeniable. I do not release the rod. The relic judges. If I am burned, I am found wanting. The fire spreads beyond the library, following conduits and ventilation shafts, consuming the entire 7th level. We retreat upward, level by level, pursued by smoke that carries the smell of burnt parchment and something sweeter, something that might be incense or might be flesh. The Manufactorum crypt is collapsing inward, its structural integrity compromised by the inferno, and we ascend through a building that is devouring itself. We reach the surface with 47 minutes remaining on the chronplate. The Thunderhawk is waiting, engines already ignited, assault ramp down. We embark in silence, and the ramp seals behind us with the finality of a tomb closing. The gunship lifts off, and through the rear viewport, I watch the Manufactorum crypt collapse into a crater of fire and ash. The grey sky above it darkens further, as though the planet itself is mourning. The chaplain orders helms sealed and vox silence observed. No one speaks, no one questions. The silence is procedural, sanctioned, expected. I look down at my hands and see that the reliquary rod has cooled. The cracked aquila at its peak has not widened further, but the bronze wire holding it together has turned black, as though tarnished by heat or by something less tangible. I turn the rod slowly, examining it from every angle, and I notice something I did not see before. Inscribed along the shaft, in script so fine it is almost invisible, are names. Hundreds of names. Thousands. They are the names of every reclusium penitent who has carried this rod before me, each one recorded in the moment of their duty, each one a link in a chain that extends back centuries. My name is not on the rod, not yet. But I understand, with cold certainty, that it will be added when the duty is complete, when the judgment is rendered, when I am either vindicated or found wanting. The flight back to the strike cruiser takes 18 minutes. The Thunderhawk docks without incident, and we disembark into a hangar bay that feels impossibly clean, impossibly ordered, impossibly distant from what we left behind. Chapter serfs rush forward to receive weapons, to collect armor, to begin the post-action maintenance rituals. I hand the reliquary rod to one of them, a young woman whose face is serene, whose hands do not tremble, whose eyes do not meet mine, and she carries it away toward the reclusium shrine. We are escorted not to the armory but to the apothecarian. This is unusual. Post-action assessment typically includes only injury treatment and gene seed inspection. But the bay we enter is empty except for Chaplain Voss, an apothecary whose armor is marked with the skull and gene insignia, and a third figure, a hooded warrior whose presence I feel before I see him, a pressure behind my eyes, a weight in my chest. He is Codicea Thane, a librarius sanctioner, one of the chapter's psychic enforcers. His role is not combat but correction. His presence means something has been flagged, something requires adjustment. The chaplain speaks first. His voice is calm, almost gentle. Brothers, you have performed your duty with precision and faith. The compliance action was executed according to doctrine. The enemy was purged, the structure was collapsed, the evidence was destroyed. By every metric, this was a success. He pauses. The weight of the unspoken word hangs in the air. However, exposure to the enemy's methodology carries risk. You have heard words spoken in inverted liturgy. You have witnessed civilians using our prayers as weapons. You have seen doctrine turned against itself. Such exposure, even in brief doses, can create fractures in certainty, doubts that are not immediately visible but that metastasize over time. This is not a judgment of your character. This is an acknowledgement of operational reality. The apothecary steps forward, holding a tray of instruments, an injector, a neural probe, a small silver brand shaped like the chapter's iconography. Each of you will undergo a memory integrity scan. This is standard protocol. We will verify the structural cohesion of your recall and, if necessary, apply corrective seals to prevent intrusive recollection. I understand, in that moment, what is about to happen. They are going to edit us. Not crudely, not by erasing entire spans of memory, but by locking certain thoughts behind psychic barriers, by making specific recollections inaccessible unless authorized, by turning our own minds into archives that require permission to access. We will remember serving. We will remember obedience. We will not remember why. One by one, my brothers step forward and submit to the process. The neural probe is inserted into the data port at the base of their skulls, and Codicea Thane places his gauntleted hand over their helms, his eyes glowing with pale blue witchfire. Each session lasts approximately 90 seconds. When it is complete, the warrior staggers slightly, blinks, and then straightens with the blank clarity of someone who has forgotten they were ever uncertain. When my turn comes, I step forward without hesitation. Resistance is not an option. Resistance would be evidence of corruption. I kneel, remove my helm, and bow my head. The apothecary inserts the probe with clinical efficiency, and I feel the cold metal slide through the neural interface, connecting directly to my augmented hippocampus. Codicea Thane's hand descends over my head, and I feel the pressure of his psychic presence pushing into my thoughts like a blade parting water. He does not speak aloud, but his voice unfolds inside my skull, layered and infinite. You carried the relic well. You did not waver, but you hesitated before releasing it. That hesitation is a seed. Seeds become weeds. I will seal it. I try to remember what I hesitated about, but the memory is already slipping away, replaced by a smooth, blank surface that feels like forgetting and smells like burned parchment. I try to hold on to the image of the canon prefect, to the words he spoke, to the pattern he claimed to see. But the pattern dissolves into static, into noise, into nothing. The Codicea's voice continues. You will remember your duty. You will remember your obedience. You will remember the outcome. You will not remember the method. You will not remember the faces. You will not remember the doubt. These things are chapter locked. They are accessible only under oath, only in war, only when the Imperium decides your mind is needed as a weapon. The probe withdraws, the pressure lifts. I stand, blinking, and I feel lighter. Not relieved, not cleansed. Just lighter, as though a burden has been removed, and I cannot quite remember what the burden was. The chaplain steps forward and places a hand on my shoulder. You have served well, Brother Castian. The Reclusium is proud of your discipline. You will return to your duties with full honors. Your name will be recorded as penitent exemplar for this action. I nod. I do not trust myself to speak. The final stage is the report. We are assembled in a small briefing chamber, and the chaplain dictates the official account while a scribe servitor records every word. The vocabulary is precise, narrow, approved. The action is described as compliance enforcement with zero collateral deviation. The enemy is described as localized ideological infection, contained and neutralized. The civilians are described as compromised population assets, irrecoverable, sanctioned for purge. The canon prefect is not mentioned. The library is not mentioned. The pattern is not mentioned. Anything that does not fit the approved vocabulary is not recorded. Therefore, it did not happen. The report is sealed with the chaplain's authorization code and transmitted to the fleet command. Within 6 hours, the planet will be marked as compliant, tithes will resume, and new colonists will be assigned to repopulate the Manufactorum crypt. The new colonists will not be told what happened. They will arrive, they will work, they will pray, and if they are diligent and faithful, they will never know that their prayers are built on ashes and silence. I am dismissed. I return to my cell, a narrow chamber carved from the strike cruiser's interior, furnished with a cot, a weapons rack, and a small devotional alcove containing a copy of the Imperial Creed bound in black leather. I remove my armor with the help of a maintenance servitor, each piece unlatched and lifted away, revealing the bodysuit beneath that is soaked with sweat and fused in places to my skin from the reliquary's heat. The burns are not severe. They will heal in a few days. The scars will remain, but scars are expected. Scars are evidence of service. I sit on the edge of the cot and try to remember the details of the day, but the details are slippery, elusive. I remember standing in the hangar. I remember the descent. I remember fire. I remember obedience. But the connections between these moments are missing. The thread that held them together severed and sealed. I try to remember why I hesitated before releasing the reliquary rod, but the reason is gone, replaced by a smooth void that feels like peace but tastes like ash. I sleep. My secondary heart slows to resting tempo. My metabolic systems enter low-power mode. My dreams, if they can be called dreams, are nothing but procedural loops, sequences of actions repeated without context, prayers spoken without meaning, orders followed without question. When I wake, the chron plate indicates 8 hours have passed. The duty cycle has reset. I am summoned again to the Reclusium, and when I arrive, I see the reliquary rod waiting on its altar, the cracked aquila still fused with bronze wire, still warm to the touch. A new name has been inscribed along the shaft in script so fine it is almost invisible. Brother Castian, Reclusium Penitent, Exemplar Compliance, Action 4, 1.7.829. M42. I stare at my name for a long time, trying to remember what I did to earn it, trying to remember what the rod judged me for. The memory is there, behind a locked door, and I do not have the key. The chaplain enters the shrine and approaches without sound. His voice, when he speaks, is soft, almost paternal. You wonder what was taken from you. I do not deny it. Yes, chaplain. It was the part of you that needed to understand. Understanding is dangerous, Brother Castian. Understanding creates the illusion of choice, but you are not here to choose. You are here to obey. The chapter has removed your burden so that you may remain functional. He places a hand on the reliquary rod, and for a moment I see his face reflected in its polished surface, a skull-faced helm, impassive, eternal, merciless. The relic judges, but the judgment is not always immediate. It accumulates, it waits. When the time comes, you will remember what you need to remember, and you will serve as you were meant to serve. Until then, trust that you are being preserved. He leaves. I remain kneeling before the rod, staring at my inscribed name, wondering if preservation and erasure are truly different, or if they are simply two words for the same silence. The bells ring. The duty cycle begins again. I am summoned to the armory. My armor is waiting, freshly sanctified, every plate inscribed with prayers I do not remember learning. I am assigned to another action, another world, another compliance. The details do not matter. The pattern is always the same. I serve, I obey, I endure. But late at night, in the silence between bells, when the ship's machine spirit hums its lonely maintenance hymns, I sometimes feel a phantom heat in my palms, as though I am still holding the reliquary rod, as though it is still judging me, as though the judgment has not yet concluded. I fear, in those moments, that the most faithful part of me is the part the chapter had to seal away, the part that understood what we were doing and still chose to obey, the part that looked at the canon prefect's 40 years of devotion reduced to ashes and thought, quietly, without rebellion or rage, that perhaps suffering is not righteousness but simply suffering dressed in the Emperor's name. I fear that the lock in my mind is not to protect me from corruption but to protect the Imperium from the knowledge that its most loyal servants are the ones who see the truth and serve anyway, not because they believe, but because belief has been replaced by something simpler and darker. Habit, routine, the weight of years, the absence of alternatives. I fear that I am already lost, but the loss is so complete, so thoroughly integrated into my function, that it no longer registers as loss, it registers as duty. The chron plate counts forward. The missions accumulate. The names on the reliquary rod multiply. One day, when the shaft is full and there is no more room for inscriptions, a new rod will be forged, and the old one will be placed in the Reclusium's vault, a record of judgment that no one will ever read because the Reclusium does not read its own archives. It simply adds to them, endlessly, a growing tower of sealed memory and silent witness. I will be one name among thousands, a single line of script worn smooth by time, a penitent who carried the burden correctly, who stood where he was told, who held the relic high even as it burned him, who obeyed even when obedience erased the reason for obeying. And when the new initiates are brought before the rod, they will be told the same lesson I was told. The relic does not protect, it judges, and if you are found wanting, you will be corrected. They will believe it, as I believed it, because belief is easier than doubt, because obedience is simpler than understanding, because in the Imperium of man, faith is not a choice but a function, and we are all, every one of us, instruments tuned to a hymn we have forgotten how to question. The day begins with the lock click of my helm sealing shut. The reliquary rod is placed into my gauntlets. The chaplain speaks the opening prayer. The Thunderhawk's engines ignite. The planet below is grey and silent, waiting for compliance. I descend, I witness, I endure, And when the day ends, I return the rod to its shrine, and I wait for the next summons, knowing that I have already forgotten why I hesitated, knowing that the forgetting is permanent, knowing that I will serve until the gene seed is harvested, and the name on the rod is all that remains to prove I was ever here at all. This is what it means to be a space marine. Not glory, not heroism, not even faith. Just function. Just obedience. Just the eternal repetition of duty performed correctly, again and again, until the meaning drains away, and all that remains is the motion itself, hollow and precise and unending. The Emperor protects. I no longer know what that means, but I repeat it anyway, because repetition is all I have left.